The marble-walled courtroom buzzed with a restless, electric tension, the kind that only erupts when the city's most untouchable elite is dragged into a place built for consequences. Reporters crowded the back rows, jockeying for position, their cameras raised like weapons. Whispers darted from bench to bench as though the gossip itself were alive. When the double doors swung open and Sabrina Vance stepped inside, the room didn't just turn, it reacted. Heads whipped, murmurs grew sharp, and every pair of eyes locked on the billionaire's daughter as if she were the event of the decade instead of the defendant of the day. Sabrina didn't glance at the chaos she caused. She moved with the lazy confidence of someone accustomed to spotlights, lawsuits, and praise from people who feared her family more than they admired them. Her tailored cream suit hugged her frame like it was sculpted for her alone, and her heels, the kind no one wears unless they're sure the world belongs to them, clicked in a rhythmic, almost taunting beat as she approached the defense table. Judge Eleanor Graves watched from the bench, sitting so still she seemed carved from the same stone that lined the courtroom. She was known citywide for her zero-tolerance approach to theatrics. A woman who once held a contempt hearing for a man who sneezed too loudly was not, by any reasonable calculation, an ideal match for Sabrina Vance. And Sabrina, who thrived on pushing limits simply to see if they'd break, recognized the clash immediately. Her lips curled in something between amusement and challenge. "Miss Vance," Judge Graves said, her voice sharp enough to close every whisper in the room, "you stand charged with reckless endangerment, obstruction of justice, and involvement in a citywide power outage that cost millions in damages. How do you plead?" Sabrina leaned forward, folding her arms onto the table as though she were chatting with a stylist rather than addressing a federal judge. "Not guilty," she said, almost sing-song. "Obviously." A collective inhalation swept the courtroom. Reporters lifted their cameras. A man in the gallery actually mouthed, "Oh my God." Judge Graves lifted a single eyebrow, a warning, not an inquiry. "Miss Vance," she said slowly, "your father's influence will not help you here." Sabrina scoffed lightly. "With respect, Your Honor, influence is sort of the family business." The room gasped as if Sabrina had slapped a judge with a monogrammed glove. A journalist nearly dropped her tablet. Even the stenographer paused before remembering she was supposed to record every word, not stare in disbelief. Judge Graves' jaw clenched so tightly the muscles in her temple twitched. She slammed her gavel on the bench, the crack echoing like a gunshot. "One more outburst," she hissed, "and I will." But Sabrina's tone buzzed. Loud. Piercing. The kind of custom ringtone only the wealthy would dare to use in a federal courtroom. Without hesitation, Sabrina reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and answered. "Answered? In court?" "Yes, hi," she said breezily, flipping her hair. "No, I'm not busy." A tremor of horror passed through the room. The bailiff looked as if he might faint. Someone whispered, "She didn't. She really didn't." Judge Graves stared, stunned into momentary silence. Sabrina continued her call. "Dad's interviewing lawyers right now," she said, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "He wants someone aggressive, flexible, and battle-ready. Oh, and he likes the one who owns a helicopter. Personally, I think the helicopter is compensating for." "Miss Vance," the judge exploded. Sabrina held up a finger at the judge and kept talking. "Sorry, that was just the judge yelling. Anyway, tell Dad the helicopter guy can call me later." When she finally hung up, Judge Graves looked like she was deciding whether this was a dream, a prank, or the opening act of a personal nightmare. "Bailiff," she said, her voice so tight it could cut glass, "confiscate her phone." Sabrina clutched it to her chest with a gasp so dramatic it could win an award. "If you touch this," she said, narrowing her eyes, "my father buys the building and converts it into a smoothie bar." The courtroom erupted, shouts, laughter, outrage, cameras snapping like firecrackers. A reporter fell backward off a bench. Someone yelled, "Is this real life?" Judge Graves hammered her gavel repeatedly, louder and louder, as though sheer force could restore order. "Order," she shouted, voice cracking on the final syllable. It took almost a full minute, but the chaos fell back into a simmer. Sabrina sat poised and unbothered, scrolling through something on her phone as if the judge's fury were background noise. And that was when the judge realized something with the cold clarity of a storm about to hit. this arraignment was only the beginning, and Sabrina Vance was about to make it absolutely, catastrophically wild. By late afternoon, the courtroom had been cleared of its chows, that the air still seemed to vibrate with leftover tension. The reporters were gone, chased out after the third outburst, and most of the spectators had drifted away, either shaken or thrilled by the circus they had witnessed. Only a few people remained: Judge Graves, whose face was set in a look of adjusted disbelief, the stenographer, who had typed so frantically her fingers looked ready to mutiny, and Sabrina Vance, perched on the defense table like a lounging cat in a millionaire's sunroom. Sabrina kicked her legs idly, heels tapping against a polished wood. "Suo," she said, stretching the word as though she were trying to entertain herself, "how long does this part usually take?" "I have a thing at 7. It's like a mixer for people who collect racehorses, but ethically, you know. I don't even like horses. I just like the jackets." Judge Graves closed her eyes for a moment, rubbing her temples. "Miss Vance," she began, her voice fragile but forceful, "I am trying to give you one final opportunity to express remorse. Or respect. Or the faintest indication that you understand the gravity of the charges against you." Sabrina brightened slightly. "Oh, I understand them. I just disagree with them." "That," the judge said through gritted teeth, "is not how the law works." "Well, maybe it should be?" Sabrina offered helpfully. Imagine if everyone could opt out of charges they found inconvenient. I feel like that would solve a lot of tension." The judge stared at her as though Sabrina had just suggested replacing the Constitution with a brunch menu. Before she could respond, the heavy wooden doors slammed open. Every head in the room swiveled. The stenographer stopped typing. The bailiff straightened instinctively, even though he was off to the side and half asleep. Harlan Vance walked in like a storm made of cashmere. Tall, silver-haired, radiating the kind of presence that only comes from being richer than several small countries combined. His suit looked hand-stitched by someone who had never made a mistake. In his hand, a sleek metallic briefcase humming faintly with a soft blue glow. "Your Honor," he said warmly, as though greeting an old friend at a gala rather than a judge glaring daggers at his only child, "thank you for seeing us." Judge Graves stared. "Vance, this is a formal court proceeding. You cannot simply." "I'd like to settle this," Harlan said politely but firmly, placing the glowing case on the prosecutor's table. "This is not a negotiation," the judge snapped. "Your daughter is facing criminal charges." "Yes," Harlan agreed, his tone maddeningly cordial, "and I'd like to offer something that makes all of this," he gestured vaguely around the courtroom, "go away." He clicked open the case. A soft hum filled the air. The inside glowed with shifting blue patterns that looked almost alive. Sabrina perked up. The stenographer inhaled sharply. Judge Graves leaned forward despite herself. "This," Harlan said, tapping the device inside, "is a fully self-repairing municipal power grid. Sustainable, decentralized, immune to outages, sabotage, or failure. It will modernize the entire city. Possibly the entire country. Worth about half the national budget, depending on the market." The judge blinked. "Twice? You're offering a revolutionary infrastructure breakthrough in exchange for a reduced sentence?" "No," Harlan corrected. "That's just for the sentence. Good behavior, of course, is an entirely different conversation." Sabrina raised her hand like a student in a classroom. "Honestly, he's not wrong." Judge Graves looked between father and daughter. She opened her mouth. Closed it, opened it again. She seemed to be calculating not just legality, but sanity. "Vance," she said slowly, "this is highly irregular." "Highly beneficial," Harlan countered pleasantly. Before she could answer, the lights in the courtroom flickered. Once. Twice. Then surged to an unnatural brightness. Everyone froze. Sabrina pushed her hair back casually. Small update. I may have connected the briefcase to the courthouse electrical system. Just to speed things up. You what? The judge gasped. The ceiling light sizzled. A fixture sparked. The bailiff ducked. Someone in the hallway screamed. A monitor behind the judge's bench stuttered through random error messages. Harlan shot Sabrina a wary, practiced look. Sweetheart, you really must stop hacking civic infrastructure.